Most people think the hard part of a nuclear escalation is surviving the initial flash. They picture the blast wave, the shattered glass, and the immediate chaos. They are dead wrong. The hardest part is hour 72, when the violent noise stops and the suffocating silence takes over. It is the moment the dust settles and your kid looks at you from the corner of a dark, freezing basement, begging for a single breath of fresh air. You look at the heavy, reinforced door. You know exactly what invisible poison is floating on the other side. This is day 4. The power grid is a ghost. The cavalry is not coming to your mid-sized town. It is just you, the clicking of a Geiger counter, and the unforgiving, ticking clock of your dwindling water supply. You have to make a choice between staying in a concrete tomb or stepping out into an unpredictable, radioactive wasteland. The basement air has become a physical weight. It smells like unwashed bodies, sour fear, and the sharp chemical tang of human waste from the makeshift bucket toilet. Your daughter is huddled under a foil survival blanket. She does not even say she is hungry anymore. She just stares at the concrete wall, her lips cracked and bleeding, her skin taking on a sickeningly pale hue. That is the exact moment the selfish, primal instinct for self-preservation dies, and the cold, calculated protector instinct takes over. You do not need water for yourself. You can suffer. You need water so you do not have to watch your child dehydrate in slow motion while you stand there helpless. The Geiger counter you bought 5 years ago is ticking steadily at 5 Röntgens per hour. The heavy, lethal fallout plume has passed over your town, but the invisible, ambient threat remains. You have to move, and you have to move today. This is exactly where the suburban preppers get themselves killed. They treat this entire scenario like a Hollywood movie. They think day 4 means the third act is over, the credits are rolling, and they can just walk out their front door to survey the damage and trade stories with the neighbours. You will look out the slit window and see them cracking their garage doors, stepping out into the grey ash-like snow. They take deep breaths of the cool air, inhaling radioactive particulate matter that will literally eat their lung tissue from the inside out over the next week. They wander down the centre of the street, staring at their phones, desperately looking for a cell tower signal that no longer exists. They are walking ghosts. They survived a nuclear detonation just to die because they could not stand the psychological boredom of a basement for one more day. They lack the discipline required for grid-down survival. You are sitting in that dark basement, staring at a half-empty box of granola bars, finally realizing your pantry math was dead wrong. Most people think they have 2 solid weeks of food. The brutal mathematical reality says they have 4 days. When you have a family looking at you for answers, guessing is not a strategy. It is a death sentence. Stop guessing. Go to protocolsurvival.com and get your real survival score. The calculator is free to try right now. It will tell you exactly how many calories, how many gallons of water, and what specific medical gear you actually need to keep your dependents alive downrange. It is the command center you need to build before the flash ever happens, so you are not doing division in your head while your kid is crying. The standard operating procedure for moderate fallout zones is lateral evacuation. You do not just jump in a truck and drive directly away from ground zero. You drive perpendicular to the wind pattern to cut your way out of the fallout plume as fast as possible. Now you might think the National Guard will step in and save the day. You might think FEMA is currently staging air-conditioned buses at the local high school parking lot. They are not. The military is busy securing strategic national assets, and your mid-sized town is at the absolute bottom of that list. Federal logistics require clear roads and uncontaminated staging areas. You are in a hot zone. You are your own extraction team. You move laterally using your own fuel and your own navigation, or you die in place waiting for a government rescue helicopter that was never dispatched to your grid. The complication with lateral evacuation in a post-strike environment is the radioactive debris field. The roads are not just blocked by stalled cars, they are littered with hot dust. 5 to 8 Röntgens per hour means you have a very narrow window of operation before your exposure becomes acute and irreversible. You cannot just put on a paper mask and hike 20 miles with a backpack. You need a vehicle with a sealed cabin. You need the weather to cooperate, and you need to navigate without satellite positioning. One wrong turn into a heavy fallout pocket, or one blown tyre that forces you out of your vehicle, and your lateral evacuation turns into a lethal exposure event. The environment is actively trying to kill you, and it does not make a sound. 3 miles away from your basement, the low, steady thrum of the massive diesel generator at the local hospital stutters, coughs, and dies. The sudden silence that follows is heavier than the initial blast wave was. In the intensive care unit, battery backups kick in immediately, but those chemical lifelines will only last a few hours. The fire station down the street is experiencing the exact same mechanical failure. The fuel gauges on the massive underground tanks are hitting dead empty. The mechanical heartbeats of your town are flatlining one by one. You can hear the distant emergency sirens stop spinning. You can see the street-level emergency lights flicker out from your reinforced slit window. The artificial light that has defined modern human existence is vanishing. The real dark age is beginning, right outside your reinforced door. The unprepared masses panic because they assume fuel is a permanent human right, not a highly finite logistical resource. They grab empty plastic milk jugs and sprint to the nearest gas station, prying up the heavy underground tank lids, fighting each other with tire irons for a few gallons of contaminated sludge. They treat gasoline like a magical elixir that will instantly solve their complex survival problems. They try siphoning from abandoned vehicles, swallowing raw unleaded fumes, ruining what little lung capacity they have left after breathing in the fallout. They are exposing themselves to the ambient gamma radiation for half a gallon of stale fuel that will not even get their stalled sedans out of the county limits. They are trading their long-term health for short-term mechanical comfort, and they are losing the trade. Critical town infrastructure relies entirely on on-site diesel tanks, usually capped by regulation at a strict 7-day supply. We are on day 4, and those generators have been running hot and heavy to keep life support active. You might think the federal government has strategic petroleum reserves ready to deploy to your neighbourhood gas station. They do have reserves, but those are strictly for military transport and federal continuity of government. A civilian tanker truck is not driving through a radioactive fallout zone to refill your local clinic. Without functioning interstate highways, civilian resupply is a 0% probability. Every single drop of diesel left in your town is now a high-value tactical asset, a true force multiplier that is mathematically more precious than blood, and it is evaporating fast. The specific threat here is fuel degradation and the violent chain reaction of grid-down infrastructure collapse. Modern civilian diesel goes bad. It attracts ambient moisture. It grows bacterial algae in the tanks. But worse, when the hospital generator dies, the refrigerated, life-saving medicines spoil in hours. When the police station generator dies, the local emergency radio repeaters go dead silent. The complication is not just that your personal truck will not start when you try to leave. The true complication is that the entire mechanical life support system of your community collapses simultaneously, removing any localized safety net. You are not just out of gas, your town is out of time. And the transition from order to absolute chaos accelerates exponentially. You look out the reinforced window and see the neighbour from across the street. 2 days ago, he was vomiting violently on his front lawn, unable to even stand up. Today, he is walking around briskly, clearing small branches off his concrete driveway. He looks up and gives you a weak, optimistic wave. He looks a little pale, but he seems entirely fine. Your spouse whispers in your ear that maybe it is finally safe to go out. Maybe the sickness was just a random flu bug passing through the shelter. You shake your head slowly, keeping your hand on the bolt of the door. You know the brutal biological truth. You are looking at a dead man walking. This is the deadly psychological trap of acute radiation syndrome. People naturally think radiation sickness is a straight, continuous line down to the grave. When the intense nausea suddenly stops, they celebrate. They genuinely think their immune system beat it. They invite neighbours over. They immediately stop rationing their clean water supplies. They let their tactical guard down. They treat a severe nuclear fallout dose like it was just a bad weekend hangover. They burn through their remaining critical supplies because they falsely assume the worst is over and rescue is imminent. It is a biological false recovery. And it is, hands down, the deadliest psychological illusion in the entire grid down playbook, because it breeds an arrogance that gets whole families killed. The harsh biology of ARS works in distinct phases. If you take over 100 rads downrange, you hit the prodromal phase immediately. Severe nausea, vomiting, crushing fatigue. Then comes the latent phase. The agonizing symptoms simply vanish for days, sometimes even weeks. You might think popping those government-issued iodine pills will magically save you from this fate. They will not. Potassium iodide only protects your thyroid gland from radioactive iodine-131. It does absolutely nothing to stop the ambient gamma radiation that just scrambled your cellular DNA and systematically destroyed your bone marrow production. Iodine is a highly specific medical tool for a highly specific isotope, not a magical fantasy shield against the thermonuclear detonation. Believing otherwise is tactical negligence. The specific complication of this latent phase is the total, silent collapse of the human immune system. While that neighbour across the street feels fine today, his white blood cell count is currently plummeting to absolute zero. A minor scratch from clearing those branches off his driveway will become a massive, lethal bacterial infection by day 10. The monster here is not the initial blast wave. It is the invisible, systemic destruction of the human body's internal defense mechanisms. In exactly 1 week, he will enter the manifest illness phase. The internal bleeding will start. The fevered delirium will follow shortly after. And there are no functioning hospitals or potent antibiotics left in the tri-state area to save him. This exact scenario is why you study the dry manuals. This is why you run the boring logistical drills on the weekends. You do not do it so you can be the toughest, most heavily armed guy in the post-apocalyptic wasteland. You do it so you never have to sit on a dirt floor next to your child, watching them develop a raging fever, knowing you let them walk outside during the latent phase because you simply did not understand the biological math. The intense, suffocating guilt of failing to protect your vulnerable family is a vastly heavier burden than any tactical rucksack you will ever carry. You have to be their shield. You have to know exactly what invisible nightmare is coming before it arrives. In the pitch black of your basement shelter, a tiny green indicator light blinks on the metal box. A sudden burst of white static violently breaks the 96 hours of silence. It is not a commercial broadcast station. It is the rhythmic, deliberate, disciplined cadence of a ham radio operator transmitting from 3 towns over. The calm voice is cutting through the massive electromagnetic interference left by the detonations. It is a digital lifeline. Your daughter stops staring at the blank concrete wall and looks at the glowing radio. For the very first time since the flash blinded the horizon, there is undeniable proof that you are not the last living people on the North American continent. Outside your reinforced walls, people are still staring blankly at their dead smartphones. They are wandering blindly around their front yards, holding their expensive glass devices up to the ash-filled sky like modern-day talismans, waiting for signal bars to magically reappear out of thin air. They curse the cell providers. They waste precious flashlight batteries trying to charge dead bricks via portable power banks. They rely entirely on fragile, centralized digital networks that evaporated the exact moment the EMP wave hit the atmosphere. They are completely deaf and blind to the tactical realities of the new world, trapped in a localized bubble of ignorance simply because they never bothered to learn the basics of analog, grid-down communication. When the central grid goes down, your cloud-based notes are gone forever. Your saved survival PDFs, your digital contact lists, your carefully planned map routes, they vanish into the ether. You need a robust system that works entirely offline, right in your pocket. I built Protocol Survival to be that exact system. It operates completely independent of the cellular grid, storing your vital SOPs and tactical checklists locally on your hard device. Secure your mission-critical data now. Go to protocolsurvival.com and download the command center today. Do not wait until the cell towers are smoking ruins to painfully realize your entire family survival plan was hosted on a fragile server 1,000 miles away. Community survival requires immediate collective action, and that action starts strictly with communication. Ham radio operators train for this exact catastrophic scenario. Their annual Field Day exercises are not just geeky hobbyist meetups, they are rigorous grid-down stress tests. Now, you might strongly think a modern satellite internet dish will easily save you. But without a massive, sustained local power source and terrestrial ground stations that have not been vaporized, your sleek satellite terminal is just a very expensive piece of plastic lawn art. High frequency and VHF bands bounced off the ionosphere by a guy with a wire antenna and a scavenged car battery are the only true force multipliers left in a fragmented nation. The extreme tactical complication with broadcasting in a post-strike environment is operational security. If you are transmitting a radio signal, you are a beacon in the dark. In a harsh world where resources are strictly zero-sum, a functioning radio heavily implies you have steady power. If you have steady power, you probably have a stockpile of food. Desperate people and highly organised predatory groups can and will triangulate VHF radio signals. You have to strictly use brevity codes. You have to transmit in very short, unpredictable bursts. The radio is your only vital link to FEMA evacuation routes, but it is also a massive glowing bullseye painted directly on your reinforced front door. The localised ambient radiation has finally dropped just enough for a very quick, tense meeting in the suburban cul-de-sac. 10 exhausted neighbours stand in a rough circle, shivering in the unnatural cold. The loudest guy on the block, the one who always bragged about his massive gun collection, immediately tries to take absolute charge. He is barking aggressive orders about setting up armed perimeters. But you can see he is sweating through his jacket. He does not know how to treat a basic radiation burn. He does not know how to safely siphon fuel without swallowing it. He has a staggering amount of firepower, but absolute zero tactical logistics to back it up. He is a walking liability. The typical panicked neighbourhood reaction is immediate tribal feudalism. They start violently hoarding everything they can grab. They point loaded shotguns at each other over half-empty cases of bottled water. They divide a quiet street of 20 people into 5 warring, paranoid factions. They let fragile egos dictate their survival strategy. The self-appointed alpha male tries to rule by sheer fear, completely alienating the retired nurse 2 doors down, who is literally the only person capable of identifying a staph infection. Or the quiet mechanic who can actually rig a solar alternator. They systematically destroy their own talent pool because they foolishly confuse blind aggression with competent, effective leadership. They will all freeze in the dark together. True governance in a grid-down survival scenario is a ruthless triage of human skills. You immediately identify advanced medical training, mechanical aptitude, and communication gear operators. You pool those critical resources. You might arrogantly think you can be the ultimate lone wolf. You think you and your custom rifle can easily hold down the fort indefinitely against all comers. You absolutely cannot. The lone wolf always dies of a simple tooth infection on day 14. You have to sleep eventually. You have to scavenge for calories. You desperately need a rotating watch schedule to maintain perimeter security. A lone wolf is just a future, well-stocked loot drop for a highly coordinated tactical group. You need a functional tribe. The horrifying threat complication here is the brutal ethics of the lifeboat scenario. Your newly formed suburban community has exactly 1 retired doctor and 3 full courses of broad-spectrum antibiotics. You currently have 5 people showing severe signs of acute radiation exposure, and 2 healthy workers with deep infected lacerations. Who exactly gets the medicine? The loudest guy with the guns? The mechanic who fixes the only water filter? The ultimate burden of leadership in a grid-down scenario is looking your desperate neighbour dead in the eye and telling them their child does not get the life-saving pills, because they are not strategically vital to the group's survival. It is a decision that will permanently break your soul. You rapidly pack your heavily modified vehicle. The lateral evacuation protocol is officially a go. You meticulously wrap your daughter in heavy wool blankets and securely strap an N95 mask onto her small face. You carry her directly to the truck cabin, so her boots never touch the radioactive ash currently dusting the concrete driveway. The mid-morning sky is a bruised, unnatural, sickly yellow. The wind is howling low, carrying the invisible fallout steadily from the east. You double-check your analog compass. You are driving hard north, perpendicular, away from the lethal plume. You take one last, long look at the suburban house you spent 10 years building. It is just a contaminated tomb now. Other panicked people are actively making their final mistakes. They jump in their sedans and just mindlessly drive away from the blast. They do not check the prevailing wind direction. They drive straight down the major interstate, accelerating directly into the absolute heaviest concentration of the descending fallout plume. They inevitably get stuck in massive, miles-long traffic jams of abandoned vehicles, sitting helpless in their cars while the ambient gamma radiation slowly cooks them through the thin metal doors. They die gripping the steering wheel, staring blankly at a military roadblock, simply because they let blind, animalistic panic completely override basic navigational logic and tactical patience. They ran a marathon directly into a burning furnace. To execute a lateral move, you desperately need physical, topographical maps and a reliable lensatic compass. You carefully calculate the wind vectors and draw a strict perpendicular line away from the blast zone. You take abandoned secondary dirt roads. You might think you can just rely on the emergency alert system to tell you, over the radio, which local roads are currently clear. You cannot. The government environmental sensors are either destroyed, overwhelmed, or the data is classified. There are absolutely no convenient traffic updates in a nuclear winter. You have to manually read the harsh terrain, anticipate severe logistical choke points, and have heavy bolt cutters ready in the passenger seat to breach fences when the county roads are blocked. The specific logistical complication of moving a vehicle through a moderate fallout zone is strict decontamination. Every single time you step out of the truck cab to clear a downed pine tree or push an abandoned car out of the ditch, you are getting covered in hot particulate matter. If you climb back into the truck without shedding that contaminated outer layer and wiping down completely, you've just brought the radiation inside the safe cabin. You will trap your family in a rolling microwave. You have to aggressively conduct field decontamination in the freezing cold, stripping protective layers, washing with your scarce drinking water, all while keeping a paranoid eye out for desperate looters in the tree line. You finally breach the outer city limits. The heavy truck tires crunch violently over broken safety glass and scattered debris. The dashboard dosimeter is finally blessedly dropping. 4 Roentgens. 3. 2. The lateral move is actually working. But as you look in the cracked rearview mirror, you see the faint, glowing, unnatural haze hanging heavily over your town. You did the hard math. You executed the SOP. You saved your kid. But you suddenly realize that tens of thousands of people are still back there, trapped in basements, waiting for a grand rescue that will never come. The total silence of the open road ahead is deafening. You have survived day 4, but the war is just beginning. We spend our entire modern lives building expensive physical walls to keep our families safe. 30-year mortgages, wooden fences, digital alarm systems. But a true crisis strips all of those illusions away in a fraction of a microsecond. The electrical grid is not what keeps the lights on. It is what keeps the monsters out. And when those fragile systems inevitably fail, the only real wall left standing between your family and the endless dark is your prepared mind, your disciplined training, your unwavering willingness to do the brutal, unforgiving math when everyone else around you is closing their eyes and hoping for a miracle. Stay sharp out there, stay offline, and stay ready for what comes next.